Guys, let's have a talk. We have a huge problem. Look at the graph. Less than 5% of you are subscribed to my channel. It doesn't take much to make me happy. How about 1 in 5 of you subscribe right now?
Was the houseboy for a house of sorority girls. F Part 3, Strip Beer Pong. When I was in college, my fraternity had a partnership with a nearby sorority wherein we'd send over one of our newer members to act as a houseboy. This guy's job would be to visit the sorority house a couple times a week and do menial chores, such as vacuuming and laundry. My sophomore year, that turned out to be me. The sorority house had 8 residents or houses. They were split among 4 bedrooms on the second floor, which were connected by a common hallway that led to the bathroom. The first floor had the living room, chapter room, kitchen, etc., and the laundry room was in the basement. All these areas became my responsibility. I tried to be mature and respectful, but things went about as you would expect the first few weeks. Despite the free labor, some of the housees resented the lack of privacy from having a guy around so much. Whenever it'd knock on a bedroom door, there'd be a delay as the occupant got herself decent before letting me in to gather laundry or throw away trash. I never saw a housie anything less than fully dressed, even when hanging out on a lazy weekend. Even after a shower, they would come out of the bathroom fully dressed. But as the weeks went on, the housies got more and more comfortable with me around. I started seeing them dress more comfortably around the house. T-shirts and jeans were replaced with tank tops and biati shorts. Bras became less and less frequent except in their laundry, of course. They began wearing bathrobes and towels to and from the bathroom. They stopped worrying about becoming decent before letting me into their rooms. I would often enter the room to find them in their underwear. Panties and loose-fitting tank tops were the most common sight. One girl, Emily, liked lounging around wearing nothing but an oversized t-shirt. It was difficult not to stare at the shape of her body through the thin cotton. Another girl, Ashley, preferred a short Victoria's Secret robe, which opened up at the side to reveal her bare leg all the way up past her waist. The turning point came one day when I was visiting Amber to collect her laundry. She was wearing only a white bra and panties. As I picked up her laundry basket and turned to leave the room, I heard her call out to me. As I turned, she slipped off her bra and tossed it into the basket. I couldn't help but stare at her perky B-cuppy easts and small pink amples. Her left nipple had a piercing. She giggled and made a half-hearted attempt at covering herself before shooing me out of the room. My heart was pounding the whole way down to the basement. Amber must have shared this episode to her friends. All I know is that this type of thing became even more common among the other housies. It became a regular occurrence to enter a bedroom and see a pair of uncovered B-easts. All of the housies acted completely casual, as if regularly being seen half-naked by their houseboy was perfectly normal. But I think most of them began to have fun showing off and teasing me. By the end of the second month, I'd seen all 8 housies T+. One day, I was visiting Emily to pick up her room. By this point, she'd told that I didn't need to knock before entering her room, so I opened the door and walked right in. I was immediately greeted by the sight of Emily taking a nap on her bed. The blanket was down around her waist, and all of her that I could see was completely naked. The blanket was low enough so that I could make out the top of a neatly trimmed landing strip. I couldn't resist ogling her. His shapely C-cup B-east rose and fell as she breathed. Her skin was smooth and pale, and her body was well-toned. I could make out the top half of a heart-shaped crotch tattoo peeking out from under the covers. What I couldn't see was where I was stepping, and I accidentally sent a loud kick into her desk. She awoke with a start, but when she saw it was me, she relaxed and lifted her arms to stretch. Then she sat up and playfully twirled her finger, directing me to turn around. I did as ordered, and I heard her get out of bed and open her underwear drawer. This naked woman stood behind for what seemed like ages before she finally found a suitable pair of panties and told me it was okay to turn back around. Only seeing her in panties did little to calm my racing heart, and I hoped that my B-nair wasn't showing through my shorts. It was all I could do to avoid falling down the stairs as I hauled her close to the basement. Another turning point came midway through the third month. I was in the common bathroom and was getting ready to start cleaning. I'd just gotten onto my hands and knees when Ashley entered the room, wearing her blue cotton bathrobe. She said a casual hello, and as she spoke, she opened the knot to her robe, opened it up, and let it drop to the floor, leaving herself completely naked. I looked up at her from the floor in shock. I stared at the familiar sight of her perky beasts with pale, pointy ankles, and her smooth, tan skin. I also stared at the unfamiliar sight of her pussy, which was level with my face. Her pubic hair was shaped in a natural pattern, and neatly trimmed. I could see her pink clit peeking out from between her lips. My staring was cut short when she turned away from me and began to brush her teeth in the mirror. I tried to get back to work, but now I was looking at her firm round BTT. It had a small beauty mark on one cheek and jiggled slightly as she brushed. I finally tore my eyes away and forced myself to concentrate on my menial task. After a few minutes, I glanced back at her and caught her looking at me through the mirror. She reminded me to clean behind the toilet and turned to switch on the shower. She stood facing me as she waited for the water to get hot, watching me work, and giving me an extended full frontal view of her naked body. It was all I could do not to gawp like an idiot. Finally, the water got hot enough, and she disappeared behind the shower curtain. It was then that I realized how little progress I'd made in my actual chore. I left the bathroom before she finished her shower, and was met with a number of smiling faces peeking out from the bedroom doors. Apparently, they dared Ashley to go in and shower while I was inside. When they saw the look on my face, they all erupted into a fit of giggles. It seemed their dare had worked out just the way they wanted. I caught a few of them glancing curiously down at my crotch, and it was only then that I looked down and saw my benair pitching a huge, obvious tent in my pants. The sounds of their giggles followed me as I hurried down the stairs. That's all for now, but I have more stories from the rest of that year. After the bathroom dare, the Housies became even more bold. They stopped dressing casually and began to actively tease me. Part 2. After Ashley's bathroom stunt, the Housies became even more bold with their teasing. Things began to escalate to a whole new level. But throughout it all, everyone maintained the pretense that it was all perfectly normal. When a completely naked Housie marched past me on her way to the bathroom, she'd say hi to me as if we were meeting in the hallway at school, and I'd have to pretend I wasn't looking at her bouncing beasts and jiggling BTT. One day, two roommates, Lisa and Jessica, called me into their room to help them rearrange their furniture. Lisa and Jessica were both on the women's soccer team and were in great shape. When I knocked on the door and entered the room, they were already inside waiting for me. The baggy t-shirts they wore were not quite long enough to hide that they were both bottomless. I could catch a glimpse of pussy peeking out from underneath the white cotton fabric. I noticed the indent of panty lines on their BTTs, which meant they had actually been wearing panties just moments before and stripped them off as soon as I knocked on the door. Helping them rearrange their furniture turned out to mean doing it for them while they lounged around and directed me. Occasionally they'd bend over to move backpacks or sports equipment out of the way, and it'd get a nice view between their legs. I quickly learned that both girls were clean-shaved. Lisa's lips were tightly closed, forming only a thin line. Jessica's lips were more open and showed off her pink labia and clit. I also got nice views from the front whenever they'd reach up to move something onto a shelf. It took nearly 20 minutes to finally get the furniture the way they wanted. It probably would have been faster if I hadn't been so distracted by the constant pussy flashing. After I finished, they each flopped onto their beds with satisfaction, causing their shirts to flip up to their lower backs and giving me an excellent view of their toned BTTs. By the time they shooed me out, it'd been hard for so long it almost hurt. Another day, I entered a room to vacuum to discover three Housies inside: Sarah, Amanda, and Brittany. Sarah was about to show off a bunch of bikinis she'd just bought during a winter clearance sale to the other two girls. As soon as I came inside, I was eagerly invited to join them. I sat down on the bed next to Amanda and Brittany, who were actually dressed for once. Sarah was only wearing a silk robe, which she quickly slipped off, revealing her naked body. She had a narrow waist with several small beauty marks spread across her pale skin. Her beasts were lemon-shaped with end pulls that were just as pale as her skin. Her pubes were cut into a triangle shape, which pointed down to her pussy. The shopping bag filled with bikinis was on the floor behind her, so she turned and bent over in front of us to dig for her first set. Amanda let out a whistle, and Sarah playfully wiggled her BTT for us. My heart was already pounding. Sarah found the set she wanted to try first, a red one with white flowers. Amanda and Brittany approved, and I was invited to opine as well. I tried to play it cool, but I don't think I did a good job, as everything I said elicited a fit of giggles from the three girls. When she was done modeling, Sarah pulled off the bikini and bent over to get another set. The constant cycle of stripping and bending over was almost too much for me to take. At one point, Brittany declared that one of the bikinis might look good on her. Sarah invited her to try it on, so Brittany pulled off her shirt and shorts and stepped over to Sarah, completely naked. Sarah took off the bikini in question and handed it over. Once Brittany tried it on, she decided she didn't like it after all. She took it off and tossed it back into the bag. She didn't put her clothes back on before she sat down next to me, so for the rest of the bikini try-on I was sitting right next to a naked woman. I tried not to glance at her generous B-east with large areolas and cone-shaped endpoles. I was there for almost an hour before Sarah finally tried on her last set. The girls would constantly get distracted from the try-on and begin chatting about other topics, and the whole time I'd be trying not to stare at all of B-easts and pussies only feet away from me. Regarding my opinion on the bikinis, I don't think I offered anything useful to the conversation, but I was invited to offer feedback the next time one of the girls went shopping. Brittany even winked and said that a lingerie sale was coming up, which led to another giggle fit. Another episode was when the Housies recruited me bartend for the after-party for the sorority's annual costume party. About a third of the sorority was there, which included many sisters who were not Housies. My job was pretty easy, because I was only provided with enough ingredients to mix 3 or 4 different cocktails. The sisters were already pretty buzzed when the party started at 1 a.m., and they were all dressed in the standard assortment of sexy girls' costumes. I myself was still wearing the store-bought Robin Hood outfit I'd worn to the custom party, but then one of them decided to ask me which of the costumes I thought was the sexiest. Before I could say anything, all the sisters within earshot had jumped into the conversation. Soon, the whole party had decided I was judging a sexy contest. One by one, the sisters paraded past the bar while the rest of them catcalled from the edges of the room. Each of them gave a sexy flourish, such as a BTT slap or hip swing. Things escalated when Amber, the first Housie to show off, took her turn. She was dressed as a sexy devil, wearing red lingerie with red stockings and bustier. When she reached the center of the floor, she bent over and slipped off her panties and threw them onto the bar. She had actually dyed her pubic hair red. The whole room erupted into cheers and catcalls as she arched her back and ran a hand up her BTT. The girl after Amber wasn't a Housie, and wasn't used to me seeing her naked, but the party atmosphere and booze made her bold enough to spice things up. She was dressed as Supergirl, and when she reached the middle of the room, she reached under her skirt and slipped off her panties. She gave an erotic hip thrust, causing her skirt to swish almost high enough to see underneath. The girls after her followed her lead. The next girl was dressed as a witch, and when it was her turn, she pulled down her top and flashed her B-easts. Both of her end poles had ring piercings. The girl after that was dressed as a pirate queen, and lifted her skirt to flash her BTT. Underneath she was wearing a black G-string, and a skull and crossbones sticker was stuck to her left cheek. She pulled on the G-string and let it snap back into place. Next came another Housie, Ashley. She was dressed as a pervy flasher, and during the party had been wearing a long tan trench coat with modest flesh-colored underwear underneath. When her turn came, she strode to the center of the room and threw open her trench coat. At some point she'd taken off the underwear, leaving herself completely naked underneath. She strode confidently around the edge of the room, holding the coat open for each of the spectating sisters. They all hollered and cheered, and a few even copped a feel. When she circled around to the bar, she shook her B-easts at me and grinned. After the last girl had gone by, I was thankfully spared having to choosing a winner, as the whole room had decided Ashley had the sexiest and most accurate costume. I obediently declared her the winner and everyone gave one final round of applause and cheers. The experience of watching over a dozen girls trying to out-sexy each other was exhausting, and when the party died down and sisters began to leave, I slipped towards the door. I needed to get back to my room and give myself some relief. As I was leaving, I ran into Ashley. Her trench coat was still hanging open, but she had put the nude underwear back on. She thanked me for bartending and judging the costume contest. She told me her only regret was forgetting to ask me to compete in the costume contest too. As usual, I tried to play it cool, but these last words made my blood pressure spike. Despite the long party and late hours, it was a long time before I could get to sleep that night. Part 3. One night I was invited over to the house not for chores, but just to hang out. The house's basement was large enough for a beer pong table and a couple of couches, so 5 of the sisters and I formed into pairs and began playing some casual, non-alcoholic games. My partner was a pledge named Claire, who wasn't a housie. She had freckles and curly ginger hair cut to shoulder length. Claire was a freshman and was pretty bad at beer pong, so we kept losing hard. I think this was the reason why the other sisters decided to make the game more interesting. They declared that it was time to raise the stakes, and the next game would be strip beer pong. Claire's face turned redder than her hair, but she wasn't going to defy the other sisters. I knew right away that our chances were slim. The way it worked is we would have to remove a certain amount of clothing with each re-rack. A re-rack involves rearranging the remaining cups into a new triangle, and occurs at 6 cups left and again at 3 cups left. After the first re-rack, we'd strip down to our underwear. After the second, the tops would come off. The losers have to get naked. Things started off poorly. My opponents were the roommates Lisa and Jessica, 2 seniors who had a ton of pong experience. On their very first toss they bounced the ball off the table and into our cup, eliminating 2 cups at once. As the game got underway, I was able to score the occasional shot, but Claire was barely hitting the table. Ashley and Emily, who were spectating from the sidelines, started sending out taunts. "Claire, are you nervous about seeing your first naked man?" said Ashley. "No, I think she's nervous about her first time being seen naked by one," quipped Emily. As she spoke, Lisa sank another shot, and it was time for their first re-rack. Claire and I dutifully rearranged their remaining 6 cups into a new triangle, then started getting undressed. I stripped down to my cotton boxers and undershirt. Claire hesitantly pulled up her shirt, revealing a cute pink bra, and pulled down her jeans, uncovering a matching set of pink panties. The rest of her was blushing just as hard as her face. I tried to avoid staring, but she was stunning. We piled our clothes onto a nearby couch. We took our next shots. My ball bounced off a rim, and Claire's ball didn't even hit the cups. Before we knew it, Lisa and Jessica had earned their second re-rack. I pulled off my undershirt. I finally became aware of how cold it was in that basement. Claire fumbled with the clasp on her bra, as if trying to delay the inevitable. She finally got it unhooked and tossed her bra onto a nearby couch. Her cup beasts were perky and cone-shaped. The pink end pulls that tipped each beast were stiff in the cold basement air. As I looked, she suppressed the urge to cover herself. I turned back towards the table and noticed the other 4 sisters staring at me with big grins on their faces. I was reasonably athletic and had a trim figure, and the sisters made no attempt to hide their leering as they eyed me up and down. I glanced back at Claire and caught her staring at me as well. We only needed to score 1 more cup before our first re-rack, but our performance was deteriorating. Shot after shot bounced off the rims or missed entirely. Our opponents also struggled to hit their remaining targets, but after a few more minutes they were down to their last cup. Our spectators began cheering and howling with every shot. Finally, it happened. Jessica sank her final shot and the game was over. The 4 sisters cheered and applauded. Claire and I couldn't resist smiling sheepishly. Claire turned away from me, hooked her thumbs into her waistband, and slid off her panties. She had an adorable round BTT, which was covered in goosebumps. She turned back around, revealing closely trimmed but otherwise naturally growing red pubes. Underneath was a pronounced set of pink pussy lips that peeked out from between her tightly closed legs. Now it was my turn, but as I reached for my boxers, Jessica told me to wait. She ran out of the room and shouted up the basement stairs, "The houseboy is about to get naked." I immediately heard footsteps thundering through the house as the other 4 housies came rushing downstairs. They burst through the basement door and packed into the room, giggling and smiling. As soon as they saw me in my underwear, I heard whistles and catcalls. "Go on. Lose the underpants," said one. "Yeah, let's see that CCK," said another. I took a deep breath and pulled down the boxers. There was another wave of catcalls as all eyes in the room fell on my DCK. I was made to do a turn so that everyone could get a good view. I was blushing harder than Claire had been, and it seemed a lot warmer in that basement. Claire herself wasn't making a peep, but she was staring just as intently as the other sisters. I was thankful that it bothered to keep up my grooming habits. "I want a real show," said Amber. She walked up behind Claire and grabbed a handful of each beast. She grimaced playfully and began squeezing and kneading them, while Claire squirmed in her grasp. I'd been struggling to keep myself relaxed up to now, but that sight was too much. My DCK quickly swelled to full size, and there was a round of applause from the room. The sisters began shouting lewd commentary as I throbbed in front of them. "Very impressive. That's a CCK that looks like it enjoys a good esking. Definitely. That CCK would be at home with a pair of lips wrapped around it. Or 2 pairs of lips. I bet that sucker knows how to please a pussy. Those balls look like they're fun to play with, too. It's about time we saw some CCK. Has seen my pussy enough times." That comment got much agreement from around the room. "What do you think, Claire?" joked Amber as she continued to geope her. She didn't need to ask. When I glanced back at Claire, I could see that she'd gotten noticeably flushed between the legs. Her nakedness left her arousal as obvious as mine. A couple of the sisters noticed as well. "Oh yeah, she approves. Want to touch it? It won't bite. I think it likes you." "I know what she'll be doing later," said Amber. She made a rubbing motion below Claire's belly button. Finally, the celebration began to subside, and the sisters began to trickle out of the room. Claire and I took our chance and began hastily putting our clothes back on. We caught each other's eyes and couldn't help but smile. As Lisa was leaving, she gave my bare BTT a slap. "I'm down anytime you want a rematch, houseboy," she said.